Before getting started, I'm going to throw out a claim. If you clicked on this video, there's a good chance that you already have an opinion on the Sonic the Hedgehog games. In fact, this might not be the first time you've watched a video specifically on Sonic Generations. Before you even heard me narrate a single word, you probably know if you like this game or not. While this sentiment certainly isn't limited to this series, I've noticed that Sonic retrospectives and critiques always seem to hit a familiar nerve in this grand portrait of YouTube content creation. At this point, everyone's kind of made up their mind with Sonic games, whether you love it, hate it, or somewhere in between. But I think that's an important thing to note. Everyone seems to have some kind of viewpoint on this series. The discourse surrounding it can seem outright overwhelming, but in some strange way, it's encouraging to see a series gauge a reaction from people. Sonic has nailed that idea down without question, and depending on who you ask, having such a provocative identity could be in the series' DNA from day one. In all self-awareness, as a guy making another retrospective on Sonic Generations, I can say with certainty that Sonic gets people talking. The feverish discourse surrounding these games has always endured, but with Generations, it was beginning to settle down, at least just a bit. In bitter retrospect, Sonic Unleashed did contribute a glimpse into a different way that the series could function in 3D. Sonic Colors furthered this philosophy with a tighter thematic focus, with the wisps adding just enough dimension to feel inventive. I don't want to say that 3D Sonic games were starting to become good, but I will say that public opinion of the series was definitely beginning to change around Generations' release. It wasn't a time of full-on redemption, no, but it did feel like an era of gradual forgiveness for the Blue Blur. And even if you ignore the cyclical interactions between fans and critics, Generations' marketing was working. People were excited for this game, myself included. Sega was ready to celebrate 20 years of its flagship series. But commemorating such a workhorse of a franchise required some serious examination not just of the past successes, but also the state of Sonic at the time. Sega's track record with anniversary titles for this series was not flawless by any stretch, I don't need to tell you that. But the lead up to Generations was notable because that sour sense of doubt wasn't nearly as present. Colors' reception, while far from perfect, gave hope to fans that that particular title wasn't a fluke. Generations could have been the big push from good to great. And, spoiler alert, Generations is a pretty damn impressive game. It succeeds not just as a tight, fast-paced platformer, but also as a celebration of Sonic that honors his legacy with respect. While past anniversary titles have relied on nostalgia too much, or simply got too ambitious for their own good, Sonic Generations finds an exceptional middle ground, one that marries past aesthetics with a subtle, progressive refinement of the budding vibes that were beginning to appear in Unleashed and Colors. It's a game that's so incredibly easy to recommend, and one well worth remembering fondly, 10 years after its highly anticipated launch. Right out of the gate, Sonic Generations makes it pretty clear of its narrative goal, being a celebratory showcase for the hero's most memorable moments. The birthday party with his buddies, the monster transporting the cast across time and space, the surreal interaction between Sonic and his past self, it's all clearly set up to be that exciting bash that Sonic did seem overdue for experiencing. And the more you dive into it, the less you see Generations deviating from that goal. Compared to the tongue-in-cheek, self-aware humor that made Colors stand out, Generations' vibe is much less extravagant. Sonic and Tails make a few notes addressing their past adventures, and the game's ending gets pretty on the nose with the humor, but many of the winks and nudges to series history are done from a remarkably grounded place. The expository references related to the game's narrative are shockingly underplayed, letting the stage design gimmicks and set pieces do most of the talking. That does seem a bit out of character for a Sonic game when you think about it, but the sense of restraint makes Generations a sincere showcase of the series' world building. It's also worth noting how little interaction there is with Sonic's friends throughout the campaign. After rescuing them, their gameplay functions are mostly offering progression hints and tips for finding secrets, but their narrative purposes aren't nearly as front and center. Yeah, they're introduced when they're kidnapped and make their appearance at the end as a big morale boost for the final fight, but it's pretty impressive how the developers implemented these key figures from Sonic's history. The little quips they make toward the hero and his old self are done with endearment, rarely feeling overbearing, while still offering charm and dimension to the entire series' world building. There's a fine compromise struck here that I don't think has ever been met the same way since, so I can't help but appreciate the appearances that Sonic's buddies make in Generations. But I'm actually getting ahead of myself because this all doesn't happen at the start of the game. Generations actually begins with Green Hill Zone Act 1. No expository cutscene, no world map, just a starting menu, a load screen, and you're playing as Classic Sonic. Green Hill Zone Act 1's immediate appearance shows the devs' commitment to their design initiative. As was with Sonic 1's opening act, Generations' first level is a smart showcase of Classic Sonic, one that fondly references the style, and most importantly, the pace of the legendary Genesis titles. It gets straight to the point, with no hub worlds to keep the player from the action. Generations' intro is almost rebelliously true to its roots, indicating its primary goal right out of the gate with no distractions in sight. Classic Sonic stages are traditional 2D side-scrollers with some 2.5D camera tricks to spice up the presentation. Older stage gimmicks and set pieces are everywhere, throwbacks in every sense of the word that effortlessly tug at the threads of nostalgia and remind the player of the Hedgehog's 2D roots. Learning paths, timing your jumps, it all ties right into how a Sonic game from the 90s plays. While the actual control of Classic Sonic isn't entirely on point, the jump feels a small bit stiff, and the spin dash's acceleration is through the roof now, I'd be lying if I said that this is one giant automated roller coaster ride and nothing else. It's pretty strange because in addition to a high acceleration, the spin dash charges extremely quickly. It almost acts like Classic Sonic's representation of the boost, and while there are moments of uncapped speed, levels are just as focused on platforming and exploration. Precision overtakes speed in several cases, marking a surprising balance between spectacular roller coaster stage construction and more concentrated platforming. I will admit that the pacing does struggle to converge into a comfortable average, but the different sections are broken up into manageable portions, significantly limiting any automation. Overall, there isn't too much stop and go in the classic stages, and what we get are some stylish, challenging, and fun representations of the blue blur in 2 dimensions, and really, that's exactly what was needed here. For modern Sonic stages, there's a mix of 2D and 3D sections, but even that's a bit of a false claim. For the most part, you're going to be moving in a consistent direction, whether that's to the side or forward. The 2D axis bits in the modern stage roster do seem redundant though, since the classic stages have similar level structure, with the most noticeable difference being modern Sonic's moveset and how it affects level pacing. The boost is a reliable way to speed up thanks to how simple it is to gain meter, while the homing attack lets you use enemies to easily move across the stage but at the cost of momentum. It's very tough to balance these different types of moves to fully minimize stop and go, but I do think it is part of a grander criticism for how modern Sonic's gameplay is handled. In an effort to converge that sense of pacing, the boost was a necessary evil. I know, the discussion surrounding the mechanic has been arduous since its inception. The linear stage design, the hold boost to win memes, so much of the series' gameplay identity has been affected by this one gameplay concept, and it sure has divided the community. I won't say that the boost is the cure-all to all of the gameplay woes, but I will say that it did more good than bad in the larger picture of Sonic in 3 dimensions. The level design in 3D was moving toward linearity as far back as Sonic Adventure 2, as a way to capitalize on spectacular cinematic moments of exciting energy, and following in Unleashed's footsteps, Generations was a chance for total refinement of the mechanic. Did Sonic Team do that? Not entirely, but I don't think they needed to. One of Generations' key design themes is the idea of context, a way to show something familiar in a different way. Many modern-day remakes and remasters have adopted this philosophy, but Generations, as an anniversary celebration of the hero, tackles this direction head-on, repurposing past aesthetics and set pieces with new context to shape them. Very much how Green Hill plays differently between 2D and 3D, the boost changes how Sonic plays too, especially in stages based on older 3D games. Speed Highway in Generations is not the same as Speed Highway in Adventure, but by including it, the devs have an opportunity to provide that new context, a way to show how Sonic has changed over time. There is a school of thought that finds the adventure gameplay to be fine as is, and that its omission from Generations makes the game feel incomplete as a Sonic time capsule. But since so much of the character's moveset from Adventure is already represented in his Generations boost form, it doesn't make much sense to dive into a less encompassing incarnation of Sonic. All in all, the boost in Generations isn't just a way to make the blue blur fast, it's Generations' narrative representation of modern Sonic. And speaking of reshaped context, one of the biggest anticipations for this game as a whole was seeing classic 2D stages newly fit for 3D Sonic. The changes made to Green Hill and Chemical Plant to fit this modern template result in some very layered stages. For the modern side, Sonic Generations puts its best foot forward here. The multiple chemical tubes at the start of Chemical Plant are totally viable alternate paths, while Sky Sanctuary's hidden tunnels can net you additional boost power. Finding new paths has always been a big part of the series' design appeal, so seeing that translated to modern Sonic's 3D segments is more than welcome. Honestly, the only real disappointment with these 2D to 3D transitions is how few they are. This era feels very underrepresented when compared to the adventure era forward, and while I wouldn't suggest that the game take too many levels from the 2D games, there's a clear tilt in place. Maybe a Sonic CD or base Sonic 3 stage would balance things out in this regard, making his history more rewarding to players who stuck by the hero even through his more obscure outings. With that in mind, when looking at the modern Sonic stages based on the newer games, they don't shine quite as brightly. This is mostly because the transition from old to new isn't nearly as dramatic. Compared to something like Sky Sanctuary, whose layered design almost acts like an entirely original level, stages like City Escape and definitely Rooftop Run don't distinguish themselves from their original incarnations as much. They are superior to those originals in many ways, mostly thanks to modern Sonic's more polished moveset. And from a representation angle, it makes sense to include them, but don't expect as many unique features in the more contemporary levels as the stages from Sonic's 2D era. That point of reference just isn't as far away yet. On the other side of the coin, seeing Sonic's 3D era represented in classic Sonic's 2D stages is actually pretty wild. To no surprise, the aesthetic direction is right on the money, but it's not limited to just looks and sounds. City Escape still has the dramatic truck chase, but in the classic stage, it's represented throughout the entire level instead of a single set piece as it was in Sonic Adventure 2. The truck plows through scaffolding, changing the shape and structure, but fast and skilled players can preemptively reach higher ground and grab some secrets before it collapses. Even Crisis City's Firestorm lifting the goalpost away before setting up a platforming challenge across floating debris to reach the level ending is a cool way to make the levels feel exciting and dynamic. Memorable set pieces are still a big part of Sonic's level design, even in 2 dimensions, and the transition that Sonic Team made from 3D to 2D goes far beyond mere aesthetic representation. Sure, not every level has the sense of progression, these micro-narratives across the entire stage, but at their best, you can truly see that the motion isn't limited to Sonic himself. It's about giving the design a sense of liveliness, the same liveliness that permeates so many of the most memorable bits of this franchise. Generations establishes reference points for both incarnations of Sonic, and in doing so ripens the opportunity to show how classic sensibilities work under modern aesthetics and design, and vice versa. In doing so, however, Sega and the devs have shown that classic Sonic and modern Sonic are not equals. Perhaps it's modern Sonic's larger moveset or even just the explicit desire to keep things simple with classic Sonic, but you're experiencing radically different types of gameplay when choosing which incarnation you'd like to play as. Despite the reservations to 2 dimensions, classic stages are good. Damn good. But if someone asked me whether classic or modern Sonic is the better side of the coin, I would not hesitate at all to say modern Sonic. There's more layered level design, more interesting deviations in gameplay, and just more to experience in general. In retrospect, the devs could very well have made Generations with the sole intent of old made new. Green Hill Zone with modern design is interesting on its own. Classic design under that mindset seems like a redundant and even unnecessary addition. But even so, I believe classic Sonic needed to be included here. Generations is a game that needs that point of reference to truly achieve its goal of celebrating the Hedgehog's history and all that he's accomplished. There's been a discussion as of late surrounding nostalgia, whether dated gameplay is worth including in a remake, remaster, or anniversary product. If the goal of Generations is as it claims, to fully honor the legacy of its iconic source material, then I believe that simply taking the past and making it new doesn't do the justice that some might assume. There's a lot of criticism on whether 2D Sonic was good in the first place, but it's clear as day, especially to longtime fans, that it had appeal. Sega's past endeavors to revitalize 2D Sonic kind of prove that point, so if we're really going to get the full story, with all of the points of reference needed, classic Sonic stages aren't just an important part of this initiative, but the best possible way to make it happen. If there's any indication of the developer's mindset for how a series commemoration should function, it's classic Sonic himself. From the character model to his animations to his lack of a voice, classic Sonic really takes things back to the past. In this sense, it does a service to modern Sonic, showing how far the character has come over the years and allowing the modern version's personality to flourish in comparison. Not to say classic Sonic has no personality, it's just a different kind of representation, one that Sonic Team clearly respects. His excited celebrations after S-ranking a stage are juvenile but incredibly endearing, expressed via excellent animations that feel so tuned to the older years of the hero. The other characters' mention of classic Sonic's appearance, specifically his pudgy gut, are about as self-deprecating as things get. The hero's classic form really is untouched by whatever cynicisms have come this series' way. At the game's end, classic Sonic becomes fascinated by how far his future self has changed over time and even attempts some modern tricks himself. Though there's still room for improvement. While old times can feel archaic in some cases, classic Sonic is a textbook case of how an appeal to the past can work toward a game's benefit. Disposing of it simply doesn't make sense here, hence why I believe he's such an important factor as to why Generations succeeds as a Sonic time capsule. But Sonic Generations doesn't just succeed as a historical compendium of the character's coolest memories. It's also a high-quality title that's just fun to play. The HD graphics are superb in motion, the soundtrack is full of excellent arrangements and remixes from past games, and the mechanics are fine-tuned to the stage design, demanding to be replayed until every bit clicks into place. With so many levels with hidden paths and secret collectibles, the structure of Generations, whether classic or modern in style, refines the different elements that made Sonic the Hedgehog games such intense titles. The Boost, as much of a reputation as it's earned over time, works very well in Generations' modern stages, with their dynamic pacing and exciting set pieces, while the classic stages act as incredible interpretations of 2D Sonic for the HD age. All of these stages benefit from their throwback vibes, as seeing one era's gimmicks reinterpreted in new context makes for gameplay challenges that are worth overcoming with gusto, whether it's classic to modern or the other way around. Sonic Generations is a disciplined title, one that shows that its creators honor the series' legacy even through its lowest and most troubling moments. It fleshes out this franchise's best attributes and gives them the polish needed to feel fresh again. With so much time having passed since Generations' release, and within a series with such opinionated reception, I'm actually pretty shocked at just how little discussion this game is received nowadays. Despite its great quality, Sonic Generations doesn't really stand out in 2021. I've heard it called the Boost era game that's actually good. And yeah, Generations is a damn good game. But while you can find endless arguments of whether Adventure is a good or bad game, or frequent claims that Mania is the best Sonic game of all time, Generations' damn good quality is probably why it's not discussed as much as other games in the series. Despite being a game explicitly designed to appeal to fans' nostalgia, it doesn't hold the same fond memories from the community as Sonic 3 and Knuckles or Sonic Adventure 2. Because when you look at Generations clearly, you realize that there's no unique factor that could be subtracted from the game to quote-unquote make it good. Whether it was an overly ambitious narrative, a forced desire to cater to a new audience, or simply technical constraints, every 3D Sonic game up till that point had something in the way, something that kept it from reaching its full potential and achieving its design goal. Generations instead fulfills its goal of honoring the Blue Hedgehog's history by constructing exciting, amply replayable stages that nail the flow of a great Sonic game. And that's what I really think is what Sonic Generations does better than any other 3D game in the series. It doesn't have anything to carve away to make it palatable. It's not a perfect game, obviously, but as it stands now, it fully achieves what it set out to do. And looking at it 10 years down the road, Sonic Generations is an exciting victory lap for a hero who continues to keep us on the edge of our seats. And really, I think that's worth celebrating.